Labs. It's been 4 years, and I'm doing a presentation on HTMX. So before kind of going into this, I kind of just wanted to talk about like how I arrived here, why I started like HTMX in this place. The main thing is that I've noticed when working on Drupal sites, there are times when the whole page refreshes, and sometimes it's a good thing, like you want to reset the state of the page, all that stuff. But other times there's just things that we don't necessarily need to reload the page for, and it would provide a better user experience if we were able to change things without having to reload the whole page. Okay, so HTMX for Drupal developers, why Drupal core pulled it in, and what you can do with it with about 5 attributes. So what are the goals? The goals are to know what HTMX is and why it exists, recognize the 5 attributes that do most of the work, understand why Drupal pulled it into core, and spot places in your own sites where HTMX replaces custom JavaScript, and know when HTMX is the right tool and when it is. So what is HTMX? So right now in 2026, it's a lot of very popular JavaScript frameworks such as React, Vue, Angular, and they're very JavaScript heavy. They've been working to kind of cut down on JavaScript by kind of bundling the sizes so that way when people download their site, they're not downloading the entire site with parts of it. We have build tools, we have state management, we have hydration, JSON APIs, and all that stuff. And then you get into situations where people are building marketing sites and blogs, and they're shipping 200 kilobytes of JavaScript for a simple site. The name for this is JavaScript. So what is HTMX? A small dependency-free JavaScript library, approximately 14 kilobytes minified and gzipped, and created by Carleton. It adds HTML attributes so any element can issue AJAX requests. No build step, no client-side state, and no framework opinion. One script tag and you're right. So the whole idea behind this is that Drupal is essentially a really smart static site generator. It already produces HTML, and instead of adding additional JavaScript on that, we can add attributes to the markup itself and be able to do more than just what is currently out there with your get, post request, and only on certain control elements that you can use it for. So what's the core mental model with extending HTML as hypermedia? HTML in, HTML out. The server already produces HTML, especially Drupal. HTMX makes an AJAX request and expects HTML back, not JSON. The browser parses it natively with no client templates and no hydration. The whole idea is that Drupal is already really good at generating HTML. So let's try to not update certain parts or not reload the entire page when we only want to update certain parts of it. So hypermedia driven applications. It's an old idea, but a new name. The server returns hypermedia, which is the HTML with controls embedded, links, forms, HX attributes. Client just renders and does not own state and does not know the application logic. That's in contrast with single page applications where the client owns the state, routes, and a model that mirrors the server. So why does HTMX exist in the 4 opportunities? So right now we have anchor elements and form elements can make HTTP requests. And why just those 2 elements? And then only click and submit events trigger them. We have only get and post are reachable from HTML. Why not put, patch, and delete in the other HTML perks? The whole screen always gets replaced, and not just the part that we want to update. So with HTMX, there's 5 main attributes that we can use to make our pages more responsive. So the HTMX attributes is hx get, hx post, hx put, patch, delete, and that's the verb that we're going to send. We have hx target where the response to HTML goes. So for example, if you have markup, we can tell it specifically where we want to take our HTML and replace it with. We can also decide how we're going to merge it too. So the same way as the DOM being able to view inner HTML, other HTML, it's the same. And then we also have HX trigger, which allows us to fire events. And that also helps cut down some JavaScript, because now instead of having to write JavaScript to select the element and then add the event, we can now just add it with a data attribute directly onto that. And that's one of Drupal's strong points, is that we can use this with render arrays. And if you create templates, you can just add the attribute on there, and it just helps cut down the amount of custom JavaScript you have. So HX target, where the response lands. It takes a CSS selector. Default, the response goes inside the element that triggered the request. The common pattern, trigger on a button, target a wrapper div. HX swap is how it gets merged. So we have inner HTML, which is the default, which is replacing the inside of the element. Header HTML replaces the element itself. And then we have before begin, after begin, before end, after end, insert relative to. Or we could use delete, which just removes the target. HX trigger is what fires the request. So default that matches the user expectations is button, click, form, submit, and then our inputs when they change. We can override with HX trigger and then the event that we want to send, such as key up every 2 seconds, etc. And it supports filters as well if you only want to fire the event based off of certain key codes, for example, like if you want to use a shortcut. It also supports debouncing, throttling, listening on other elements. And that's useful if you're doing something if like you have an input with a search field, and that search field is going to send a request every single time you type a key. You might not want to be sending a request every single time. You might only want to send the request if a certain amount of keystrokes are clicked, or if they stop typing for, say, 200 milliseconds. So now instead of having to write a Drupal behavior with JavaScript to handle all of that, you could just add a data attribute to the element, and that will handle all of it. So big pipes rewrite. Why Drupal pulled HTMX into core? Drupal had its own Ajax framework, the Drupal.ajax library on top of jQuery. Old, heavy, and hard to extend. HTMX dependency was committed in Drupal 11.2 and had first-pass integration in 11.3. The direction of travel. Replace the legacy Ajax system, form state API, and BigPipe internals, HTMX. BigPipe streams HTML for placeholders in Drupal since 2016. The old implementation was about 40 kilobytes of compressed JavaScript with Ajax command on top of the Drupal.ajax. HTMX-based implementation is about 21 kilobytes compressed JavaScript, roughly half the size. So it's a slight load time improvement from benchmarks to it. The core maintainer described BigPipe as an unusually hard fit for HTMX. No Ajax requests, no HTMX events. The work happens before DOM content loaded, which made it a useful proving ground. And I'd like to add on top of that is that even like it is a good thing that they're cutting down the amount of JavaScript being downloaded, but in reality, when you're working on a Drupal site and you're installing many modules, you're going to have a lot more data being downloaded than just the JavaScript library. So the 71% number. Reduce the load of JavaScript size by up to 71%. That number is for browser-server interactions overall, including the BigPipe streaming phase. The caveat is it's up to. Not every page benefits equally. Anonymous users on cache pages already ship less JavaScript, and so on. It's still a real win, especially for authenticated sessions and admins. Drupal HTMX API for developers. The attributes prefix data HX. Drupal stays in valid HTML. HTMX recognizes both. And then we have an HTMX class, which is a fluent builder for attribute arrays and render arrays. HTMX request infiltrate detects HTMX requesting controllers and forms, reads HX headers without parsing them yourself, and then HTMX route true. Route options the flags and then point as HTMX aware. Controllers return renders arrays as HTML fragments and not JSON, which is we have an example of that a little later. So when to use it? What it looks like in practice. So the first example is lazy loading expensive blocks. A custom block that renders a placeholder then fetches its real user content with a data HX get attribute, and data HX trigger load is useful for slow third-party API calls. So when you initially render the page, just want to prevent loading stuff that you don't need to load just yet. Live search on view pages, and input with a data HX get, data HX target pointing to the result region, and trigger key up change delay, so we can have our key paths. And then inline delete, a button on a table row with the data HX delete and a target outer HTML. The row disappears and there's no full page. So what to use HTMX? CRUD heavy admin UIs, Drupal's bread and butter. Content sites that need a UX boost without going to a single page application. Anywhere the server is already producing HTML, which is every Drupal site. And settings pages, dashboards, forms, search listings. And then Drupal renders API already produces HTML. So HTMX just delivers fragments. I think if I were to talk about something just like the work experience that I've seen is that people tend to build a Drupal site and sometimes want a single page application. So then they use Drupal as the backend, and then they're not taking advantage of the templates and all the renders and all that stuff. And I would just add that if you are able to just add little things like HTMX and Drupal behaviors and stuff like that to your site and just add it where you need it, then you can make your Drupal site a lot more user friendly and a better user experience without having to build an entire custom single page application that then goes and reads into the Drupal site. So when not to use it, if you have a lot of stuff updating, for example, like spreadsheets, drawing tools, anywhere where one input cascades many updates per keystroke, heavy offline first apps, native mobile, after the value lives in the client side state, not server state. And closing the complexity budget. It's the whole idea of basically saying we have a finite amount of time and complexity to spend, and we can reduce the complexity by, instead of writing JavaScript to implement something, we can take advantage of the stateless HTML and extend that attributes. And then we don't have to worry about settings pages. And the whole idea is like, this is not anti-JavaScript. JavaScript has its place, but it's more saying, let's not use JavaScript when we don't need to. And then the browser already knows how to render HTML, which is basically saying let the browser do what it's good. And I have a little example that I'll show. I'll just go here. I'll show, I guess I show some of the code first. But basically, I have this little example that, okay, I don't know this is, so I'm just gonna mirror it now.
Thinking.
There we go. Oh, don't do. Always likes to make me nervous. All right. So here I just have a little example that I was going to show. You can see that we're importing this HTML.
Definitely make a video.
How's that?
That's good.
You want it bigger?
You know how to quickly swap it to light mode?
No.
This kind of projector might actually benefit from light mode. Control Shift P.
Control Shift
Theme.
D.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
Sure.
Never mind. That's much better.
There we go.
Never
Alright,
mind.
that
We can continue with dark mode.
We're developers. We gotta dark mode.
I mean, it's a
No one
camera
says-
pointing at a screen. But
Can I join the call? Maybe.
No,
Okay.
if you want to continue, you can. But
All right. So yeah, so basically you see here, we import this HTMX, and one of the things to note is, we don't have to actually include the HTMX library because we're importing essentially this HTMX builder. So you can see here, like I had it as an example, but I just commented it out to show it. And here we take, your ability to render array. So we have our target container, we have our attributes on it, and here you can see the target, the style is just some basic styling so we can see, and then we have some placeholder text. So, and next we look at the actual button. So we're creating a button here, and all it is just a button. But if you look at the endpoint URL, so I have a route, and this is just using Drupal. So now we go and create the instance of this class, and we tell it what's the URL for the GET request that we want to use, what's the target, how do we want it to swap, and what are we applying it to. So here we're saying we're applying it to the button. And then the rest of it, this controller here is just returning some markup for us, just so we can see an example. So we go over here. Go over to the browser. So I just made a simple example. You can see here the button. I can go and just inspect it. You can see all we have is our data HX get, the attributes. Sure. What's that? I'm just speaking small.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see here, we have our data HX target, our data HX get request, and then how we're swap. So all the data attributes is on here. This is really helpful because, you know, if you're not doing this with a code example or a quick template, you can use a module that has attributes from here. So then now you can basically have this additional functionality through site building and not yeah, so I'll just show an example. If I go and I look at the network tab, click here, you can see it makes the get request, and then here's the content, and then it just goes and does it. And then I can click again to see the time. Get request. So that was a simple example I made. But if you go to their actual website, htmx.org, they have a bunch of examples here. Like if you want to see some specific things and how to use it, because essentially the whole idea is that, like, the difference between like Drupal and just using it for, you know, HTMX examples is that you're putting attributes on, and the way you put those attributes on is going to be three different ways. You might be putting it on through a template, through code with a controller or something, or you could be adding it through Layout Builder as a field attribute. So you can come into this HTMX, see the markup in the specific examples, and then you can go to a view and say, hey, I want to output this as HTML, and then you can just go and make the request to get the HTML that you want, and then go to there. So you can see, like, here's the markup and all the attributes and examples, and then you can come down here to actually play with it.
That's super neat.
Quick to load. There was one I wanted to show. Here's an infinite scroll one. So you can see, just, yeah.
Oh,
This keeps going. And this is kind of what I'm talking about is that, like, the whole point of this isn't to say that JavaScript is bad and you shouldn't use JavaScript on a Drupal site. It's saying that, like, for specific use cases, like this can cut down like a Drupal behavior, and you can write less JavaScript with this by adding these attributes. So yeah, that is if you want to get more information there. And Solomon actually told me about something recently I didn't know about, but you can actually see that there, if you want to get involved, there's a HTMX initiative.
By the way,
This one? Yeah. Yeah, and then here's a blog post that kind of talks more about it, and what they're trying to do with this. They're trying to do a rewrite from HTMX, refactoring it. Yeah, so lots more information. These are some good resources, and I don't know if I can find it right now, but there is one book that I was reading. I think it's called HTMX something. Book. This one? I can't find it.
okay.
Yes,
So you
sorry.
don't have to write Drupal behaviors?
Sorry?
You have to write any JavaScript code?
No, so the way this works is that HTMX is a JavaScript library, and it basically like you go and you add your attributes to it, and then it goes and handles whatever. So like it's just because I know from like my own experience, like there's been lots of times where I've written like a behavior because I need to add an event or something. And it just helps cut down that boilerplate code because now yeah, it's just easier to add attributes to an element sometimes instead of writing.
Oh,
It's really cool.
yeah. I wonder what the limitation for it would be. Because just whatever get request, right? Like, would it?
Well, no,
My
you can
main
do
concern-
get, put,
Yeah,
patch,
yeah.
delete, like.
My main concern, I feel like, is like it's almost like a tool that kind of like shoot yourself in the foot with it. Like if you're doing something with like if you're looking at accessibility, for example, and then you have elements. Now you unlock the ability to do a get request from any element, or
Yeah.
include or delete. So it's like I feel like in a way like you kind of have to be more like mindful if you're gonna use it.
Yeah.
Like, more ways.
Yeah, because when you were talking about putting it into like layout builder and like giving site builders the ability to actually make these things dynamic, the first thing I thought of was like, man, I hope they put an ARIA live region there when
Yeah.
they update their code, their HTML dynamically.
So maybe there's a discussion to be had about like how much ability you want to give site builders. But that's the idea, because like if you're an administrator or a developer, like it's a tool that you use. Like maybe you don't give it to someone who's a site builder doing content, but even as like a developer, it's less code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot cleaner than using the Drupal Ajax stuff directly. Like I like how you're defining all of your behavior in one place. In your example, you're just doing it in PHP and adding it after you build the form. And then you've got your endpoint to send the data back. You just got those two things to manage, and it's overall a lot less than Drupal Ajax.
Or like one of the things I didn't mention that I talk about is that like originally the reason I was kind of like to this was because I wanted to figure out like if it was possible to kind of like make your Drupal site feel like a single page application. And where it kind of led me to was kind of like Refreshless, which was a module that would basically like capture the middle of the site, so you'd have your shell. But the issue with that is like you have a lot of issues with it breaking like like requests being made, with JavaScript requests being made. So then it kind of turned into like, okay, well maybe it's actually good for the page to reload sometimes, but there are times when it might not want it to reload. For example, like if you have a view and exposed filters block, and then you're going and changing your filter items, and then it reloads the entire page. That's something that I want to look at to see like, oh, is it possible to use HTMX So that way we can just reload the results instead of having to, click a facet and the whole page reloads. So it kind of turned into like a lot of challenges with trying to make the entire site not reload, and there's times we want it to reload. So then it comes down to like, okay, well, can we be more specific of when we use this and prevent it reloading?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I mean, as someone who just wrote an entire search index page that has like a bunch of facets and the duet date picker and all the like text search to make that dynamic and not reload the whole page. Was a pain in the butt. Like enabling Ajax is one thing, but like if you're splitting out your form into different pieces, you're gonna have to identify parts of the form that submit the other thing.
They have to update.
Yeah. And so this is really cool.
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard it was work. Even
Yeah.
though like it's a library, you could have added it to the work before. Was excited.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like Petite View.
I'm not familiar with Petit View, but
I don't know. I'm just looking at it from another way. Sometimes I need to see it shown as different things.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can just flip the switch and
It just goes boop.
yeah.
maybe we need to show a site-wide alert.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have this. And
Yeah, that will just
refresh it. Just
Right.
for that,
Yeah. So back in the 90s, like we just jammed everything into the HTML file. And then in the early noughts, it was all about semantics, and HTML is about the content, CSS is about the appearance, and JavaScript is about the behavior. But now we're seeing things like this and like Tailwind, like starts to mash it all back together again. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know, maybe it's a good thing for certain things, but maybe bad.
I think that. So I'm of the opinion that Tailwind does not belong anywhere near a Drupal site. I love Tailwind a lot. I use it a lot in like personal projects. But the point of Tailwind is so you know what classes you're using and can compile out all of the extra crap. So it's really small CSS. But if you are storing your CSS classes that you use in config and in templates and in like scripts that your other like modules might be handling, or if you have layout overrides enabled and now classes are stored in the database, there's no way for you to compile all the classes out, and so it becomes like 3 times the size of Bootstrap. I think it defeats the purpose of what Tailwind is trying to do. However, I do agree. I kind of like moving some things back just right in your face. You can understand what's happening just looking at the HTML.
Yeah, that's like one thing about Tailwind. Like just the fact that the classes were there. So when I looked at the markup, I could just look at it.
You don't have to inspect like all the styles to figure out like why does it look this way. I can see the classes that are applied to it. I know why it looks this way.
I think that's really interesting when you know separation concern behavior the markup. And I think that I read one book about this, like hypermedia HTMX. I can't remember, but I think it was the person that actually like made HTMX that wrote this book. His whole argument that he was trying to make is that a lot of people are like kind of rewriting stuff in JavaScript and implementing it. And he's trying to say that, hey, like the browser's really good with HTML. Why don't we use what the browser's good with? But yeah. Because I don't know, like I'm trying to think, like if you have a Drupal site and then you start using to be honest with you, like when I work on a Drupal site, there's a lot of times when there's like something completely obscure, completely hidden away, and then I find it later, and then it's like, wow, I really would appreciate it. Thing, but at the same time, like this is in the HTML itself. And a lot of times, like I'm going through the markup and I'm reading it. And that's why I like Tailwind with some sites, was because the classes were the markup. I was able to quickly tell like what style is being applied to it. And I think that like I don't know 100% like what I think about like the separation of concerns. I think that's the point, but it's like I really like the fact that like I can look at the HTML and see what's going on really quickly just by looking at the attributes and how all you are doing is changing the attributes to be able to. What do you think about that idea?
I mean, I do really like looking at the HTML, just understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
I actually think it is more beneficial in this case because looking at the style, like going inspecting and looking at the styles panel, it's still all right there in front of you. So like, yes, it's more convenient to have all your classes in the HTML to tell you exactly why it's styled that way, but it's not hidden. When you're talking about where the hell did this come from on this page, because JavaScript loaded it in and I don't know what else is happening, having that kind of chain of events spelled out in the HTML in front of you, I think that's fantastic.
Like I think it makes it a lot easier to see what's going on, and it's a lot faster to see what's going on. In terms of like separating HTML from like CSS and JavaScript. Like I think I like the idea of like having simple Drupal pages that do like one specific thing, and then and not having like a whole complicated system.
Yeah, I'll have to like JavaScript. Basically.
For like super
Yeah.
basic things, like
Yeah. Like if you just give the end users this control through some sort of interface.
Go out.
yeah.
I honestly think I would rather give people attributes or access to data attributes from HTMX than like allowing them to put like a script tag in CK.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, good news, you can't. The CK editor will not allow you.
I swear I've heard people say
Four
that CK
four
before.
used to.
Yes. Okay.
Five does
That's
not.
what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of four.
Yeah. I know this is very cool.
So HTMX didn't originate in Drupal, like having Drupal as the backend. What did it originate as having the backend? Well, like it's got to have some backend.
It's just a JavaScript library.
Right, but the author, were they using Laravel or some other PHP
Probably.
thing? Or?
Every cool thing comes from Marvel. Oh boy.
Don't quote me on this.
Don't quote Gemini on this.
If you don't like this, blame Google.
Developer. Okay. We have released as complete zero dependency rewrite of an earlier library. Intercooler.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess we have to learn about intercooler. Interesting. How much have you done with the debouncing? Like, so when you trigger something, is it just natively always going to debounce itself? Like,
Well,
is
it's a
debouncing just
filter.
built right
Like
in.
you put it into the actual attribute itself. Like
Okay.
you say like 300 millisecond delay. Like you can, it's not just saying, it's not like you're saying, I'm adding a class called debounce and then it does it. Like, it does that with options.
Okay. So I guess, is that just, so is it protecting it from being called again for 300 milliseconds?
Yeah. So
Okay.
basically, like you tell it the request is going to be made, and then you say like, oh, I don't want you, because like if you're typing and then you send a request every single keystroke.
Yes. Yeah.
That. So that's
No, debouncing is a huge issue when it comes to like Ajax views refreshing.
Yeah. Let's see if there's probably be an example in here. I don't know. Oh, here's a cool one. Drag and drop. So actually,
Oh.
I I don't
Well,
know.
that's neat.
I just clicked it because it looks neat, but I don't know.
All of these features built into Drupal?
I mean, they're in the HTMX
Or
library.
certain things are,
No, this is the HTMX library, so all these are.
okay.
Yeah, so like a couple of years ago, there was talk of like maybe we should like rewrite the entire Drupal backend in React.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, the idea is just like totally overwhelming. But with something like this, that opens up a lot of possibilities for the future where we could just like, make a little thing a little bit more interactive.
It leans into progressive enhancement, right?
Mhm.
Like it's just tiny bits becoming a little more modern.
And shortcuts too. Alt key. Shift.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
I wonder though, like, we implement a lot of this on the single page. Like, would it have any,
I don't think it would be any more detrimental than
Oh.
throwing Ajax everywhere. Like, because Drupal, it's not like you're going to load multiple libraries, right? Like,
no, you're not, but I mean, at least,
event listeners are pretty cheap on resources. They don't really do anything until the event happens. Because they just register themselves and then just lay dormant until they trigger.
Oh, here it is. Okay, so you see this HX trigger. And quick change, delay, key up.
Okay, delay is 500 milliseconds. Okay.
And yeah, like that's the whole gist of it is how like you use Drupal to create the markup. So if you are able to add the attributes for these examples of markup,
Yeah.
yeah, you can see it working. Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.